And we're here with Conor Ryan. Connor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing great. You are just back from South Carolina. How was that? The food looked amazing.
It was lovely. Yes, I've been eating salads for the last couple of days to try to reacclimate my body after having just an absurd intake of butter and red meat and a whole bunch of stuff down there. So it takes a toll. Definitely. I don't know how you can live down there. Like you do 2, 3 days of just going down to a lot of good restaurants, but adds up. So I'm recovering back up here in beautiful Massachusetts where it's rained, I think, every day since I've gotten back. Um, but then I'm actually going back out on the road to Washington State in a couple of days. So I am all over the place. Where in the world is Conor Ryan is going to be me, but we'll still have Bruins coverage all throughout this time.
There we go. Yes, you were going to be everywhere at once. Have you been to South Carolina before, right? That's how you knew about all those restaurants, I would
I
assume,
have
or no?
not. No, no. I'm one of those guys who like does the vacation booking, like book the plane, and then I'm on just TripAdvisor for the next like 3 weeks. That's kind of how I map out that stuff. I like to go in with a plan. So, which usually if you go to a place like Charleston means a whole bunch of like going on Open Table or Resi or any of those places and reserving stuff in advance. Because if not, you're gonna be at Waffle House, which it's not a bad thing. I'm not going to
That's not
besmirch.
terrible.
I'm not going to besmirch the storied institution that is Waffle House, but you got to do some planning in advance.
Yes. Oh, yes. But that looked like a blast, especially the food. The food aspect,
Of
I was like,
course.
damn. And then you mentioned the rain. For the people who don't live in New England, I guess you're kind of lucky in this situation. For the people who do, I know we obviously have a lot of listeners who are from New England. The weather's sucked the past like 2 weeks. It's awful. It's just rain. All raining right now. It's just going to keep raining. So yeah, you didn't miss much while you were gone. I think you missed exactly nothing. You missed more rain. So hopefully the weather cleared itself up. Another thing that happened over the past week was I think You Should Leave season 2 came out. I don't know how many
Great
people
day.
listen. I don't know how many people who listen watch that as well, but you should. It's an easy watch. It's not like 17-minute episodes, 2 seasons, 6 episodes per. Tremendous season. Loved it. Easiest thing to rewatch as well. What was your favorite of the sketches?
Oh, wow. I'm a big Carl Havoc guy. The problem is I need to like watch like an episode about 5 times for it to fully like imprint itself in my brain. Cause like I remember the first season I watched, it was like, oh, this is pretty funny, this is quirky, and then it just slowly breaks down something like in your frontal lobe, and then eventually it just becomes hysterical. So I have to watch it a couple more times, but I think Carl Havoc is a favorite so far. But there's a whole bunch of good ones this season. Maybe not as good as
It's
season one, but I got to give it some time. But there were still quite a few times where I was losing it.
Yeah, it's you hit it right on the head. It takes a few rewatches. Like when I first watched season 2, I was like, well, it was funny, but like it wasn't as great as maybe season 1 was, and I still don't think it was as good as season 1. But then you rewatch it a bunch and you see the memes on Twitter and you see like what the quotable things are, and every time you watch a sketch, you see something new, and it's like, all right, this is hilarious.
Yes,
And I love that. Mine was probably Coffin Flop. I think that was
that was up there.
hilarious. That was genius. So yeah, that was funny as well. I've been watching that a ton this weekend. That's something you can rewatch 1,000 times. You said it came out the day you went out to South Carolina. You couldn't watch it on the plane because you'd be laughing too much.
Yeah, I wasn't
Can't be
gonna
that
laugh.
guy on the plane.
I wasn't
Can't
gonna
be that
laugh
guy on
like
the
a
plane.
lunatic. Yeah, exactly. It was a 8 a.m. flight. I'm not gonna do that to a bunch of people. So as tempting as it was, so do a lot of self control to not like get to the hotel, like post up and just watch open up Netflix for a while, but opted not to.
Well, so anyways, something else that happened over the past week was there's a new Stanley Cup champion, and they're not new. It's the same one as last year. The Tampa Bay Lightning won. No surprise there. Boring series, crappy series. Um, really was never close ever. And granted, we both picked the Lightning to win. I don't think anyone thought the Canadians would actually do it, but I don't think it. We both said 6. I thought the Canadians would put up a little more of a fight, and they really didn't. And it was just a boring series, and not the greatest way, not the greatest thing for the league, but things are going to probably go back to normal next year, division wise. And that's not great for your Boston Bruins. And not to say that it's not great, but they're facing a much tougher division than they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where you go back to the only two teams in the division who are really bums are the Sabres and the Red Wings. The Senators could be a spoiler, but then you have the Maple Leafs, the Lightning, the Canadians, the Panthers. 5 teams that all made the playoffs this year and could easily do it next season. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be tough. Obviously it's going to depend on what goes on with the Bruins this offseason, what they do. I think like on paper right now, they're still in line to be at least a playoff, not a lock, I guess, based on the way the division is, but still a team that's going to punch a ticket to the playoffs. How legit they are is going to depend on what they do to fix these holes, whether that's re-signing, Krejci and Hall, adding, bottom 6 depth or another legit top 6 winger. You have to shore up that decor, find a good plan in place for the situation in net. But it's not going to be easy. It's not like we can go into a season like we usually did where it's like, all right, they're at least going to finish top 4. Like, you got to worry about the usual suspects, Tampa Bay, Toronto. But this year you've got that same issue, right? Where, I mean, Tampa's going to probably lose some guys unless barring some, Legionnaires' disease outbreak and everyone like has to be an LTIR the entire year. They're still going to be good though. They still, even if they like moved 4 or 5 guys off of that team, you still have like Andre Vasilevsky, who's enough to maybe will get you to the playoffs. Like you don't even need.
I was gonna say you have to figure Coleman's gone, Tyler Johnson's probably gone, but the core is still intact.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, again, this is a Tampa team that you look at the way they develop and draft, which is a sign of a good team. Like people want to hop about the cap gymnastics and all that stuff, but this is a team that every single year, I think we've talked about it before, but bring up like Joe Schmo from like fucking Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, who they took like in like the 7th round, and he becomes a legit player. Look who scored the Game 7 winner was Colton, this random dude. Like, so you know what? Next year, like, not to say that they're going to lose Coleman and a guy like Colton or like a Matthew Joseph is going to become like a 50-point guy, but they're probably going to be competent, solid NHL players. Like that team, just the way they draft and develop is insane. Not just in terms of like, the big name guys that, weren't first rounders like Kucherov and Point and finding those guys in the, 2nd round or what have you, but just these other like, 4th, 5th round players that, they may not be flashy players, but they end up being, solid guys you can put into the mix. So they're still going to be great. Then you've got Toronto who, as much as maybe they could be in line for a bit of a change, you still got that same core. They still got that top 6 that, they're still going to put up points. We don't know what the situation is going to be in net. Maybe they move one of a Mana or a Nylander, but they get a legit defenseman in return. So they're still going to be.
By the way, and they're still going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a playoff team. I know everyone's like, oh, it's the Leafs, whatever. They're out in the first round. They're still they're still taking a playoff spot. I think people kind of forget that.
And I think maybe the biggest issue, or maybe the team that jumped itself into the ring that now becomes a legitimate issue, because we knew going into this upcoming year that Toronto and Tampa Bay was going to be mixed, but it's Florida. Florida's going to be right up there too. They're a good team. Like obviously I don't think people follow them as much, but that was a team that was on the wrong side of some bad breaks in that first round series. Maybe the only entertaining playoff series, or one of the few. It really wasn't a thrilling playoff round, but Florida and Tampa Bay was a great series, and Florida's a good team, man. Like they've got a lot of, franchise guys, you got the Barkovs and what have you. They have younger players who are stepping up, as concerned as I think probably people are about Bobrovsky's contract, which looks dreadful. They've got their own kind of Swayman, in Spencer Knight, who could, go on a run this year for them and put them over the top. They've got underrated guys like Mackenzie Weegar, who like could have probably gotten more steam as a Norris Trophy candidate. He's a great player. Great value pickups like, Verhage, who is crazy this year. Dude looked like a legit top 6 guy. So that's a team I think you have to look out for. That's a team that can, score. They've got solid guys on defense, and they've got a young goalie who could take off. So that's a team that I think complicates things, because even if you finish 3rd in the division behind, let's say, Tampa and Toronto, you're still fine. You throw Florida into that mix, who's probably, barring something going haywire, a good chance to be a playoff lock. Then things get complicated, where either you're fighting for that 3rd seed, or you're teetering on the edge on the 4th seed, which you've got, whether it's Montreal or another team like that, that complicates things as well.
And also the Panthers are going to get Ekblad back, who is their guy on the back end. I think the Canadiens thing is interesting because I think, again, they were 18th overall this year in the whole NHL. And a normal year, they probably wouldn't have even made the playoffs. But that's still a good, we said this all throughout the playoffs. That's a good lineup. Like that lineup is and should be good. And you have to wonder, with this postseason under their belt, Cole Caulfield a little more, what's the word? Comfortable in the NHL. Yeah. You wonder if that's going to be another, I could see the Canadiens easily finishing outside of the playoffs next year, but I could easily see them definitely in the playoffs and fighting the whole way and being a good team. And they're still going to have Price in net, who maybe is re-energized after this cup run. So again, but you mentioned it. It's still the Lightning, Maple Leafs, and Bruins, but the Panthers complicate things a lot. That's a team, again, that you didn't have to worry about before that now you do because, again, they're complete. Even if Bobrovsky sucks, they still have Spencer Knight, who we know probably won't suck. And by the way, and a lot of people are going to say, oh, what do you think? The Bruins aren't a playoff team? No, I think the Bruins are a playoff team, but I think it's going to be a tougher road than you're used to, where, the past bunch of years, it was always you're in, you're set. You're in the playoffs. It's just a matter of who are you going to play in the first round, the wild card or the Maple Leafs. But next year, I think it's much different. I don't think that there's a clear, again, moves still have to be made. We still have to see what the Lightning end up doing, who the Bruins re-sign, what their deal is in net. But I don't know if there's a set like 1, 2, 3, 4 out of this group. I can't sit here right today and say, oh, it's going to be the Lightning, then the Bruins, then the Leafs, then the Panthers, because again, the Panthers looked great in the regular season. I could easily see them jumping up to second, jumping up to first. So I think it's very open. And that's not always amazing for the Bruins, just given their age, given their hopes at a cup. But it's funny. BetOnline just released the Stanley Cup odds for next season. Which always fun when people release the odds, but like the day after the cup ends or a championship ends, the odds come out for next season immediately. And the Avalanche have the best odds, then the Golden Knights, then the Lightning, then the Hurricanes, which is going to be interesting. They could lose their number one defenseman. They could, who knows what happens in net, but they're fourth. And then the Bruins are fifth. Bruins are fifth best odds, 14-1, tied with the Maple Leafs at 14-1. And then for those keeping score at home, the Panthers, then the Canadiens. So in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the top 8 odds for the next year's Stanley Cup, 5 of them are in your division. Would you put the Bruins as high as fifth?
I think they're in that tier. It just all depends on what they do this offseason. If it's just status quo and it's another one of like, let's try the young kids, then I think you have a right to drop them because we've seen what this current core can bring you, which is at least a second round appearance, a great regular season, but you need legit NHL guys to put that group over the top. So if they go out and get a, legit top pairing defenseman, add another 1 or 2 guys on the blue line, like a McCabe or an Alexiak, get a legit middle six winger guy that could either play with Krejci or, be an elite third line guy with Coyle, whether that's a Coleman or even like a Thomas Tatar or anything like that. There's a whole bunch of moves the Bruins need to make, and that also includes, revamping fourth line, finding what they do in net, which like if you go into the year with, let's say you sign Rask, waiting for him to return, and you do go with Swayman and Vladar, a lot of risk there, a lot of intrigue, but also, it's not probably the most stable environment to go into the season with, but if you check off some of those boxes on the off season of, let's say they get an Ekholm and let's say they're like Ekholm and Coleman, and you add those guys to the mix, then I think you have a good chance to feel pretty good about where you are. Are they the favorite? No, not even, especially with Tampa, I think even losing guys is still going to be very good, but they're still a team that if they address these flaws that were fairly evident, especially in the playoffs, it wasn't like the Bruins lost, it was a sum of all the parts. Like, there was evident flaws on that team as to why they came up short against the Islanders. If you correct those and you still have this core in place that still plays at a high level, you're right in the mix, which at this point, at this stage in this, cup contention window they have, it's kind of all you're looking for. Because once you punch a ticket, as we saw this past year, anything can happen. So.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think they're in the right spot, right area. I can't sit here and be like, oh, they should be fourth. Doesn't matter. Who cares? And the Islanders, by the way, are 20-1 odds. They are ninth. That's a team I might put money on. 20-1 for the Islanders. That's, throw like $20 on that. that's not a bad little bet. They always end up in the final four or in the final bunch. They could make a move this offseason to kind of leapfrog everybody else. Wouldn't be surprised if they make some noise. But it's funny. One team that's not in the top 10 for next year's odds is the St. Louis Blues. And the St. Louis Blues could see some turnover. Vladimir Tarasenko is requested to be traded from the Blues. Reported that he was kind of pissed off he didn't get the captaincy, pissed off about how they've treated his injuries. And as when there's always a big player, it's would he be a fit for the Bruins? And Tarasenko's an odd one because Tarasenko, when healthy, is nasty. Tarasenko's got a nasty shot, lethal offensively, would definitely fit somewhere in the Bruins top 6, but has really fallen on a lot of injury issues, especially the past 2 years. Is this someone the Bruins should be looking at?
I tend to think not. And there's one thing where there's obviously the injury risk. I think he's had 3 shoulder surgeries, which is not great. And when he came back last year at the tail end for a little bit with the Blues, he didn't look that great, So there's that obvious part of it of the risk of, all right, you're dealing for a guy that you're hoping is a 30-goal, 70-point guy, which if he's that on this team, hell yeah, that's great. Put him with Krejci and Hall, which holy crap, that's a first line in most other teams.
Yeah, that is the first line.
Yeah, you move Craig Smith down with Coyle, who hopefully will be healthier after undergoing off-season knee surgery, and you got something cooking there. That'd be great, but there's no guarantee that he's going to be that guy. If he's a guy that maybe he's just injured the whole year, which is dreadful. But even if he's healthy and he plays 75 games and he's 15 goals and 40 points, it's not what you traded for this guy for. So there's that risk. That being said, there's also the situation the Bruins are in where they've got maybe 2 more years of legit contention. So this is kind of the time you have to roll the dice. And if it's a gamble you have to take, what more do you have to lose at this point, right? Like we saw what Tampa Bay did. And as much as people want to, again, complain about their cap shenanigans, what have you, that was a team that I think you look back on it now, it's like, you got to give them credit for being like, hey, this is our window. We're losing a bunch of guys. Let's kick everyone's teeth in. Like, fuck this. Why are we waiting? Let's do something about it. So if you're the Bruins, maybe it's a risk you have to take in terms of, it's not oftentimes you have a guy who could be a 30-goal scorer up for grabs. So there's that component of it that I think you have to look at. But I think maybe the biggest issue I have for it has to do with the contract, because if he was available for $5 million, then you take that risk for sure. $7.5 million, that's when things get tough, right? Because you got a guy who you don't really know what you're going to get in him. You hope but and committing $7.5 million to that guy when you've got so many other issues to deal with, whether it's shoring up that defense or saving money for next year when Charlie McAvoy's due for a pay raise or what have you. Like if you get Tarasenko right now, it could limit your chance to also be able to pay to get a guy like Alexiak or McCabe, or take on other contracts to really kind of round up that roster. So I think that's maybe the biggest concern for me is the contract more than anything, because I think at this point, maybe it's a risk worth taking just because you desperately need a guy added to the mix to put this team over the top. But the contract, I think for me, is the scariest part of it.
Yeah, and I also don't think you necessarily need that. As you said, they have bigger needs. Like if they didn't have Taylor Hall, then yeah, I would say give Tarasenko a shot. Like that's a legit proven top 6 guy. Only 2 years left at 7.5. You take the chance, But again, they're going to be paying Taylor Hall a lot, most likely. Not 7.5, I don't think, but in the $5 to $6 million range long term. That's kind of your guy in that situation. And again, I think it's better spent money if they take the 7.5 they'd want to give to Tarasenko and instead put that towards, as you said, Alexiak, just defensemen, put it towards a team end, put it towards bottom 6 guys, put it towards depth scoring, because right now your top 6 works. And again, Tarasenko, Krejci, Hall sounds incredible, but is that worth it when your third and fourth lines aren't really helped a lot? and you didn't do much on D, and you come back next season with a D core of Grzelcyk, McAvoy, Riley, Carlo, Lozon, and Miller. And that's like, again, they just need to be better depth wise. I don't think Tarasenko should be top on the list. Now, I just remembered this because a lot of things happen. Last week, Jack Eichel sat down with Sarah Underwood for an interview on Fox 25 News, and he was asked about playing in Boston. And he said, yeah, I mean, I think every kid grows up dreaming of playing for their hometown teams. Whether that happens now, later in my career, whenever, who knows? If it ever happens, it'd be pretty cool. But who knows what's going to happen here in the next little bit. Just what we needed. Just what we needed to stoke those flames of Jack Eichel to Boston. Just perfect. Now, to put things into perspective, Connor, let's say you got a job in Colorado. Let's say you get a nice job out in Colorado, right? And someone says to you, how would you feel about going home? You grew up in Boston. You grew up in Southie. Boston's your home. You're a hometown guy. And so it says, how would you feel about going back to Boston and working at some point? You'd be like, that'd be pretty cool. I'd love to go home. Family's there, and Sullivan's is there, and the whole everything's there. The tea. It'd be pretty cool.
That's definitely what I would reference first. I need to go home to go on this bootleg ass train service.
Train service. The tea is what's in Boston. Charleston has beautiful restaurants. Boston has the tea.
Yes.
But you would say, like, I'd love to go home at some point. That'd be pretty cool. That's kind of what Eichel was saying in this situation. But granted, I think if things were going well in Buffalo, I don't think he would have said this.
Right.
But again, it continues to stoke the flames of Jack Eichel to Boston.
Of course. Which, again, you're not getting unless you move McAvoy or Pastrnak. So, oh well.
When does his no movement clause
next year? So,
next year.
Like the only I think feasible way the Bruins could somehow get Jack Eichel is if the Sabres, who I can't imagine they would ever think this, view the fact that they're not getting good return on Eichel this trade market and hold on to him and try to deal him next year when he's healthy. But I have to imagine they look at it and be like, all right, we know what's going to happen. If we hold on to him, that no movement clause comes in, he's going to be like, fuck you, I only will go to Boston. In which that plays, at that point, you're kind of in a similar spot as like what Taylor Hall was with wanting to go to Boston, where you're going to kill your value. So do you move him now for probably a lackluster, all things considered, return to a team like Anaheim that, you don't have the leverage in this situation because he's injured. So it's not like you're going to ask, I think, Anaheim for like Zegras and 4 other legit guys and a first round pick and get it. You're probably going to get like half of that for a guy that cost $10 million against the cap in a flat cap era and he's injured. So it's not a good spot if you're the Sabres. They're in a pretty shitty spot because I think you have to imagine they know what's coming if they hold on to him for another year and try to recoup his value, which would seem to be a logical thing if you're not in a rush to just blow it all up. But you look at what Eichel has said, you hear about kind of the stuff of, how connected he is to Boston and how much leverage a no movement clause has. They probably got to move him now. So, and if that's the case and he doesn't have to say where he's going, the Bruins aren't going to be able to, I think, outmatch even lesser returns that people are going to offer up, because even if it's not the haul that maybe we thought it could be a few years ago to get him, where it's like, you need legit NHL players going back, legit, top 20, league-wide prospects going. Even if it's not that, the Bruins still can't compete with, a Zegras or some other legit prospect. They just don't have that in their system, nor do they have guys on the NHL roster that they can part ways with that aren't key cogs on this team right now, like a McAvoy. So barring Buffalo holding on to him for another year, which I can't fathom they would do, then, oh well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If they did hold on to him, though, after next season, I think Eichel to Boston would make sense.
Then it changes quite a bit. If they hold on to him next year, then it becomes very real.
Because you said it becomes the Taylor Hall it becomes Taylor Hall stuff, where he only kind of wants to go to Boston. Eichel only wants to go to Boston. And then you're giving up, a second, Jake DeBrusk and, I don't even know, prospect for Jack Eichel. And it's like, damn, that's a haul. That's a steal. So that could happen. But up until then, I mean, it's hard to imagine if he goes to Southern California, whether that be the Kings or the Ducks, that he would want to leave after, a year. So it feels like once he goes, he goes. I don't foresee him being like a year with the Kings and being like, screw this, I want to go to Boston.
Right.
But I also just, from my perspective, I mean, you go to the Kings or the Ducks, that's almost similar situations to Buffalo. It's just a way nicer place. Like, you have some solid prospects coming up, but you have to think they could be going in return for Eichel. A guy like Zagreus could be going to the Sabres. So it just feels like you're going into a losing situation again. But I guess those teams have brighter futures, and that's a nicer area, and you get to see palm trees. And you're not stuck in Buffalo, New York. So maybe that's a positive. Maybe that's a good thing, So, anyways, the Eichel stuff continues. It will continue all off season. I think people like it because it's fun. It's fun to imagine Eichel.
Oh yeah,
it's a good time.
And again, like if they hold on to him, then it becomes very real. Then it gets very fun for us because, like, I think right now you're looking at a 5% chance. Maybe the Bruins just mortgage like 5 first-round picks and somehow get him. I still don't think that's happening, but I'll give it like
Borrell, Senishin, and DeBrusk, 3 first-round picks.
But I give it like a 3 to 5% chance of it right now. If you hold on to him for another year, Buffalo does, and that no movement clause kicks in, it bumps up to like 65, 70, 75. Like
it's like the snow day. It's like the snow day calculator. Remember when we were kids and you look on the internet, snow day calculator? Like right now, snow day for tomorrow is like, or snow day for today is like, 3 to 5% chance. It's not that high, but snow day for tomorrow, very high.
Exactly. So wait it out a little bit more.
Yes, the Eichel stuff though we'll keep track of. The Tarasenko stuff. Interested to see where Tarasenko goes.
Yeah.
Because again, flat cap, $7.5 million for an injured guy like him who has struggled a bit with injuries. I don't know who picks that up, but maybe it's the Lightning. Maybe the Lightning are like, hell, we're gonna find a way to do this. But anyways, interested to see what happens with Tarasenko, Eichel, and the Atlantic Division next year. That's some Bruins Beat for this week. Connor, before you go, is there anything that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, we're going to be looking at a few other, potential offseason pickups for the Bruins. I think one guy who's an intriguing potential option is more of a third-line guy is a Thomas Tatar who could be available. So he's a guy that's got quite the pedigree, also very underrated in terms of maybe some of his analytic numbers. So we'll do a deep dive into that. Obviously, the Kraken draft is upcoming, so we'll do another mock draft of that, which I don't think people are going to be very surprised with at this point. I think the Bruins aren't going to be a team that's going to get really like smoked by the expansion draft like some other teams who have a slew of key cogs up in the NHL roster. But we'll take a look at that as well. So all that will be over at bostonsportsjournal.com. So follow over at BSJ. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at Conor Ryan _93.
Yeah, that Kraken draft is coming up. I still am in the mode that it's like July 1st or July 4th. We're currently recording July 12th, and this episode comes out on July 13th. The draft is the 21st. It's very soon.
And again, when that happens too, like I would not be surprised if like that draft is done and like the next day, like Hall resigns or other guy. Like a lot of teams are gonna like be like typing into the transaction wire getting stuff done because that's really the thing that's slowing everything down at this point.
Yeah, and maybe Tatar's like the Michael Ryder, going from the Canadiens to the Bruins. So maybe that's the thing there, huh? Anyways, that is Bruins Beat for this week. That's Conor Ryan, Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.